What happens when a music legend sits down for what should be a casual chat, only to face disrespect that cuts so deep she walks off set in front of millions? In just 44 seconds of careless comments, Michael Strahan managed to turn a simple interview into one of the most shocking moments in late-night television history. This is the story of how one host's entitled behavior pushed an icon too far. The stage is set at the studio where Michael Strahan hosts his late-night talk show. The audience is buzzing with excitement because tonight's guest is none other than Chaka Khan, the queen of funk herself, a woman whose voice has defined generations and whose career spans over 5 decades. She's here to talk about her latest project, her legacy, and maybe share some stories from her incredible journey through music history. Chaka walks out to thunderous applause. She's dressed elegantly, carrying herself with the grace and confidence of someone who has earned every bit of respect she commands. The audience is on their feet. This is a woman who has 10 Grammy Awards, who has sold millions of records worldwide, who has inspired countless artists. She settles into the guest chair, smiling warmly at the crowd, clearly ready for what she assumes will be a pleasant conversation. Michael Strahan bounds over with his trademark grin, but there's something off about his energy tonight. He seems more focused on playing to the crowd than actually connecting with his guest. He doesn't stand to greet her properly. He just plops down in his chair and immediately launches in. "So, Chaka Khan?" He starts, dragging out her name in a way that already feels dismissive. "Thanks for coming on the show. I gotta say, my mom used to play your stuff all the time back in the day." Back in the day. The phrase hangs in the air. Chaka's smile tightens just slightly, but she's professional. She's been in this business long enough to handle a clumsy opening. "Well, I'm glad you're staying. Mother had good taste." She responds smoothly, getting a laugh from the audience. Music is timeless, you know. It doesn't really have a day. Michael doesn't catch the subtle correction, or maybe he just doesn't care. He's already moving on, shuffling through his note cards with an air of someone who hasn't actually prepared for this interview. Right, totally, he says, not really listening. "So you've been doing this music thing for what, like 30 years or something?" The audience shifts uncomfortably. Anyone with even basic knowledge of Chaka Khan's career knows she's been performing since the early 70s. That's over 50 years, not 30. It's the kind of mistake that shows a complete lack of research, a fundamental disrespect for the guest sitting right in front of him. Chaka's expression changes. The warmth is fading, replaced by something cooler, more guarded. "Actually, it's been over 50 years, she corrects him, her voice still professional, but with an edge now. "I started with Rufus in '72, and I've been making music ever since." "Oh wow, 50 years, Michael says. But the way he says it makes it sound like he's talking about an antique rather than a living legend. That's a long time to be doing the same thing. Do you ever get, tired of it? Like, don't you just want to retire and relax?" The audience gasps quietly. This is Chaka Khan he's talking to, a woman who has repeatedly said in interviews that music is her life, her passion, her purpose. Asking her if she's tired of it is like asking a fish if it's tired of swimming. Chaka sits up straighter in her chair. Her patience is clearly wearing thin, but she's still trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. "Music isn't something you get tired of when you love it the way I do," she explains, speaking slowly as if to a child. "It's not a job to me, it's who I am. Every time I step on stage or into a studio, I'm doing what I was born to do." "Yeah, but, Michael interrupts, leaning back in his chair with an almost mocking casualness. "At some point, don't you think it's time to let the younger artists have the spotlight? I mean, music has changed so much. What you were doing back then, it's not really what people listen to anymore, right?" The audience is dead silent now. This isn't playful banter. This isn't a joke that landed wrong. This is straight-up disrespect, and everyone in the room can feel it. Chaka Khan is staring at Michael Strahan with an expression that could freeze fire. Her jaw is tight, her eyes hard. "What I was doing back then," she says, her voice low and controlled, "created the foundation for what people listen to now. Every artist today who talks about empowerment, who talks about soul, who talks about real musicianship, they're standing on the shoulders of artists like me. So no, I don't think I need to step aside for anyone." The audience erupts in applause, supporting Chaka, but Michael seems annoyed by this. He's losing control of the interview, and instead of backing down gracefully, he doubles down. Okay, I hear you," he says, holding up his hands in mock surrender. "But come on, You have to admit that the music industry has moved on from that whole funk and soul thing. Kids today are listening to hip-hop and pop and all this new stuff. They don't even know who you are half the time. That's the moment, that's the line he crosses that makes this situation go from uncomfortable to explosive. He just told a 10-time Grammy winner, a woman in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a literal icon of music, that kids don't even know who she is. The disrespect is so profound, so staggering, that for a moment everyone just sits in stunned silence. Chaka Khan slowly removes her microphone from her lapel. Her movements are deliberate, calm, but there's a storm brewing behind her eyes. "You know what, Michael?" she says, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "I came here tonight to have a conversation, to share my story, to connect with people who appreciate music and artistry. But clearly, you didn't do your homework. You don't know who I am, you don't respect what I've accomplished, and you certainly don't value having me here." Michael's smile falters. He's starting to realize that this isn't going the way he planned, but his ego won't let him apologize. "Hey, I'm just saying what everyone's thinking," he says with a shrug, trying to play it off as casual honesty. The industry has changed. That's not an insult, that's just facts. "Facts?" Chaka repeats, her voice rising now. "Here are some facts for you. I have sold over 70 million records worldwide. I have influenced everyone from Mary J. Blige to Beyoncé. I have songs that are still being sampled and covered by today's biggest artists. And you have the audacity to sit here and tell me that I'm irrelevant?" The audience is applauding again, louder this time, showing their support for Chaka. Some people are even standing. But Michael, instead of reading the room and realizing he needs to course correct, decides to keep digging. "I didn't say irrelevant," he protests, but his tone suggests he's just splitting hairs. "I'm just saying that your time was then, and now is now. Different eras, different music, different audiences. That's all I'm saying." "That's all you're saying," Chaka repeats, shaking her head in disbelief. "Do you know how insulting that is? Do you have any idea how hard artists from my generation worked to build this industry? We didn't have social media to promote us. We didn't have streaming numbers to boost us. We had our talent, our voices, and our dedication to the craft. And we created timeless music that people still love today." Michael shifts in his seat, clearly uncomfortable now, but too proud to back down. "Look, I respect what you did," he says, though his tone suggests otherwise. "But this is a late-night talk show. We keep things light, we have fun. Maybe you're taking this too seriously." That might be the worst thing he could have said. He's now gaslighting her, trying to make her seem like the problem for being offended by his offensive comments. Chaka stands up. She's done, completely done. The microphone is already off, and she's gathering her things. "Too seriously?" she asks, her voice filled with controlled fury. "You invited me to your show. You disrespected me from the moment I sat down. You questioned my relevance, dismissed my legacy, and now you're telling me I'm taking it too seriously?" "No, Michael. What's happening here is that you're showing exactly who you are. You're showing that you're more interested in getting cheap laughs and controversial moments than actually honoring your guests." Michael stands up too, but not to apologize. He seems defensive, almost offended that she's calling him out. "Come on, don't be like that," he says, trying to sound casual but coming across as condescending. "We're just having a conversation here. If you can't handle a little back and forth, maybe late night isn't for you." The audience boos. Actually boos. This is Michael Strahan's own show, his own audience, and they're booing him because they can see what's happening. They can see that he's being completely unreasonable, that he's treating a legend with contempt, and that he's now trying to blame her for his own bad behavior. "If I can't handle it?" Chaka's voice is incredulous. "I have been in this business for over 50 years. I have faced record executives who tried to control me, critics who tried to dismiss me, and an industry that often didn't respect women, especially black women. I have handled more than you can even imagine. What I won't handle is sitting here and allowing you to disrespect me on national television for your entertainment." She starts walking toward the exit. The audience is going wild, applauding her, shouting support. But Michael isn't done. Yet, his ego won't let her have the last word. "This is my show," he calls after her, his voice louder now, losing its smooth television polish. "You don't just walk off my show." Chaka stops. She turns around slowly, fixing him with a stare that could melt steel. "Your show?" she asks quietly, but her voice carries across the entire studio. "This show exists because of people like me. We built the entertainment industry. We paved the roads that you're walking on. And if you can't show basic respect to the people who came before you, then your show doesn't deserve to have guests like me. You know what? Fine. Michael says, his face flushed now. If you want to walk off, go ahead. But don't come crying when no one remembers who you are in 5 years. The audience gasps again. This is beyond unprofessional now. This is personal, cruel, and completely uncalled for. Chaka Khan just shakes her head, a sad smile on her face. In 5 years, Michael, people will still be singing I'm Every Woman at weddings. They'll still be playing Ain't Nobody at parties. My music will still be touching lives and inspiring artists. But you'll just be another host who thought being loud was more important than being respectful. With that, she walks off the stage. The audience rises to their feet, giving her a standing ovation as she exits. The applause is deafening, drowning out anything Michael might try to say. He's standing there, alone on his own stage, while his audience cheers for the guest who just walked out on him. But Chaka isn't finished yet. As she reaches the wings, she stops one more time. The cameras are still rolling, catching every moment of this spectacular implosion. She looks back at Michael, and when she speaks, her voice is clear and strong. You know what the saddest part of this is? She asks. I came here excited to share my story. I thought we were going to have a real conversation about music, about artistry, about the journey. Instead, you treated me like a has-been, like someone who should be grateful just to be here. But I'm Chaka Khan. I don't need this platform. This platform needed me. And you just threw that away because you couldn't get past your own ego. Michael opens his mouth to respond, but nothing comes out. What can he say? She's absolutely right, and everyone knows it. His producers are probably screaming in his earpiece, trying to figure out how to salvage this disaster. But it's too late. The damage is done. You want to talk about staying relevant? Chaka continues, her voice echoing through the studio. Relevance isn't about being the newest or the youngest. It's about creating something that matters, something that lasts. I did that. I created music that changed lives. What will you be remembered for? For making fun of your guests? For being too lazy to do basic research? For thinking that controversy is the same thing as talent? She doesn't wait for an answer. She just turns and walks out, her head held high, her dignity intact. The standing ovation continues, growing even louder as she disappears from view. Michael is left standing on stage, the smile completely gone from his face now, realizing too late what he's done. The band doesn't know what to do. Usually they'd play going into a commercial break, but the energy in the room is too chaotic. The audience is still applauding Chaka's exit. Some people are booing Michael, and there's a general sense that something historic just happened. This isn't just a guest walking off. This is a moment that'll be talked about for years. Michael finally tries to regain control. He clears his throat, attempting to slip back into host mode, but his voice lacks its usual confidence. Well, that was unexpected, he says with a forced laugh. Guess she couldn't handle the heat. But the audience isn't laughing. If anything, the boos get louder. They're not on his side. They saw what happened. They watched him disrespect a legend for no reason other than his own amusement, and now they're watching him try to spin it as her fault. One audience member actually stands up and shouts, "You should apologize!" Others join in, echoing the sentiment. This is unprecedented. Audiences don't usually turn on the host like this, but Michael's behavior was so egregiously wrong that they can't stay silent. Michael's face goes through a series of expressions: confusion, anger, defensiveness, and finally something that might be the beginning of realization. But instead of taking responsibility, instead of acknowledging that he crossed a line, he tries to deflect. "Hey, I was just doing my job," he says to the audience. "I ask questions. I push buttons. That's what makes good television." "That's not good television," someone shouts back. "That's just being rude." The producers finally cut to commercial, but the damage is catastrophic. In those few minutes, Michael Strahan managed to alienate his guest, his audience, and anyone watching at home who has even a shred of respect for Chaka Khan and what she represents. Backstage, Chaka is surrounded by staff members who are apologizing profusely, assuring her that they had no idea the interview would go that way, that they're huge fans of her work. She handles it all with grace, thanking them for their kindness, but making it clear that she won't be returning to finish the interview. She's done, and rightfully so. Meanwhile, Michael is having a very different conversation with his producers. They're trying to explain to him just how badly he messed up, how this moment is already spreading across social media, how people are not on his side. But Michael, in his arrogance, still doesn't quite get it. He keeps insisting that he was just keeping the interview interesting, that Chaka overreacted, that everyone is being too sensitive. She's a professional. One producer tries to explain, she's done thousands of interviews. If she walked off yours, that means you really crossed a line. But Michael isn't ready to hear it. He's too caught up in his own narrative, where he's the misunderstood host just trying to do his job, rather than the reality where he's a disrespectful interviewer who let his ego destroy what should have been a great segment. Back on stage, after the commercial break, Michael has to address what just happened. He can't just pretend it didn't occur and move on to the next segment. The audience is still buzzing, still processing what they witnessed. So, we were supposed to continue our conversation with Chaka Khan, Michael says, trying to sound casual. But she decided to leave. I guess some people can't handle honest questions. The audience boos again. They're not buying it. They know what they saw, and framing it as honest questions doesn't change the fact that he was disrespectful from start to finish. One brave audience member stands up and confronts him directly. "You were rude to her. You didn't even know basic facts about her career." Michael looks taken aback. Audience members don't usually challenge the host like this, but tonight is different. Tonight, people aren't willing to let this slide. "I knew about her career," Michael insists defensively. "I said my mom used to listen to her music." "That's not knowing her career," another person chimes in. "That's just knowing she exists. You disrespected a legend, and now you're trying to act like she's the problem." The situation is spiraling. Michael's own audience is holding him accountable in real time, and he has no idea how to handle it. He's used to being liked, used to having the room on his side, and this reversal is clearly throwing him off balance. "Look, I think everyone needs to calm down," he says, which is possibly the worst thing he could say. Telling people to calm down when they're rightfully upset never works. It just makes them more upset. "We're calm," someone responds. "We're just disappointed that you treated Chaka Khan like that." Michael tries to move on to the next segment, introducing his next guests, but the energy in the room has completely changed. There's a tension now, a feeling that something fundamental has shifted. The easy rapport between host and audience is gone, replaced by skepticism and disapproval. The next guest, a comedian scheduled to promote his new special, walks out cautiously. He clearly knows something went wrong, and he's trying to gauge the situation. Michael attempts his usual jovial greeting, but it rings hollow now. "Welcome, welcome," Michael says, shaking the comedian's hand. "Thanks for being here. I promise I'll treat you better than the last guest." He means it as a joke, but it falls completely flat. The audience doesn't laugh. They just stare at him, unimpressed. The comedian looks uncomfortable, unsure how to respond to such an awkward moment. Thanks for having me," the comedian says diplomatically. "Big fan of Chaka Khan, by the way. She's incredible." It's a subtle dig at Michael, a way of showing solidarity with Chaka without directly attacking the host. Michael either doesn't catch it or chooses to ignore it, pressing forward with his prepared questions for the comedian. But the interview never quite recovers. Everything feels forced, artificial, like everyone is just going through the motions until they can end the show and go home. In the control room, the producers are watching the social media response in real time, and it's not pretty. People are posting clips of the confrontation, dissecting every moment, pointing out every instance where Michael showed his disrespect. The consensus is overwhelmingly in Chaka's favor. People are calling her brave for standing up for herself, praising her for not tolerating disrespect, celebrating her dignity in the face of Michael's rudeness. For Michael, the response is harsh. People are calling him out for not doing his research, for being condescending, for letting his ego get in the way of a good interview. Some are bringing up other instances where he's been dismissive of guests, suggesting this isn't an isolated incident but part of a pattern. It's the kind of social media pile-on that can seriously damage a career, and it's all happening while the show is still on air. As the show finally ends, Michael's closing remarks are brief and lack their usual warmth. He thanks the audience for coming, promises them great guests for the next show, and signs off. But there's a defeat in his voice, a recognition that something has gone terribly wrong, even if he's not fully willing to admit his role in it yet. Backstage, there's an emergency meeting. The network executives want answers. How did this happen? Why wasn't Michael better prepared? What's the plan to address the fallout? Michael sits through it all, his earlier bravado fading as he starts to understand the magnitude of the situation. This isn't just a bad interview. This is a defining moment that could alter how people see him as a host. Chaka Khan, meanwhile, has already left the building. She's in her car, heading back to her hotel, processing what just happened. She's disappointed, certainly, but not regretful. She stood up for herself, for her legacy, for every artist who has ever been dismissed or disrespected because someone decided they were no longer relevant. She knows that her fans will support her, that the people who truly understand her impact will stand with her. And she's right. By the time she reaches her hotel, her phone is flooded with messages of support. Fellow artists reaching out to praise her for walking off, fans expressing their love and admiration, industry professionals apologizing on Michael's behalf. The overwhelming message is clear. She did the right thing, and people respect her even more for it. The contrast between Chaka's exit and Michael's predicament couldn't be starker. She left with her dignity intact, her legacy untarnished, her principles uncompromised. He's left dealing with a public relations nightmare, facing criticism from all sides, forced to reckon with the consequences of his behavior. In that studio, in those intense minutes of confrontation, two very different paths were revealed. One path, Chaka's path, is built on respect, on honoring the work and the artists who came before, on recognizing that true relevance comes from creating something meaningful that transcends trends. The other path, Michael's path, is built on ego, on cheap controversy, on the mistaken belief that being provocative is the same as being interesting. The interview that was supposed to be a simple promotional appearance turned into a masterclass on respect, dignity, and knowing your worth. Chaka Khan showed everyone watching that no platform, no matter how big, is worth sacrificing your self-respect. She showed that legends don't beg for validation from people who don't understand their value. And Michael Strahan? He showed that having a platform doesn't automatically make you worthy of the guests who grace it. He showed that preparation matters, that respect matters, that you can't fake appreciation for someone's work and expect them to play along. Most importantly, he showed that when you let your ego drive the conversation, you end up alone on stage while everyone applauds the person walking away from you. The studio audience that night witnessed something rare, a real, unscripted moment of truth. They saw what happens when disrespect meets dignity, when arrogance meets authenticity, and they chose a side, loudly and clearly. They stood up for the legend who refused to be diminished, and they sat down on the host who thought his platform made him untouchable. This moment will be replayed, analyzed, and discussed for years to come, not because it was good television in the way Michael might have hoped, but because it was real. It was a genuine moment where someone said, "Enough is enough," where the pretense of polite entertainment fell away and revealed the truth underneath. Chaka Khan didn't know Michael Strahan her patience, her tolerance, or her presence, and when he made it clear that he didn't value any of those things, she took them back and walked away. That's the power of knowing your worth. That's the strength that comes from a lifetime of excellence, from decades of creating art that matters, from building a legacy that no single interview can diminish. Chaka Khan has nothing to prove to anyone, least of all to a host who couldn't even be bothered to learn basic facts about her career before she sat down. The moment Chaka disappeared through those studio doors, she was free. Free from the disrespect, free from the uncomfortable situation, free from having to waste another second in the presence of someone who didn't appreciate her. Michael, on the other hand, was trapped. Trapped on his own stage, trapped by his own words, trapped in a situation of his own making, with no graceful way out. That's what makes this moment so powerful, so memorable. It's not just about a guest walking off a show. It's about what that walk represents. It represents every artist who has been told they're past their prime. It represents every person who has been disrespected by someone with a bigger platform. It represents the choice we all have to make when faced with someone who doesn't value us. Do we stay and tolerate it, or do we stand up and walk away? Chaka Khan chose to walk away, and in doing so, she walked straight into history. This moment will be part of her story forever, not as a blemish, but as a badge of honor. She will be remembered as the legend who refused to be diminished, who stood up for herself when it mattered most, who showed the world that true icons don't need anyone's approval. And Michael Strahan will be remembered too, but not in the way he hoped. He'll be remembered as the host who was so unprepared, so disrespectful, so caught up in his own importance that he drove away one of music's greatest legends. He'll be the cautionary tale, the example of what not to do, the host who learned too late that having a show doesn't make you bigger than your guests. In the end, this confrontation revealed everything we need to know about both people. Chaka Khan showed grace under pressure, dignity in the face of disrespect, and the courage to stand up for herself. Michael Strahan showed poor preparation, casual disrespect, and an ego that couldn't admit when he was wrong. One walked away a hero, the other stayed behind to face the consequences. The studio lights dimmed after the show ended, but the impact of what happened there continues to shine brightly. It's a reminder that respect is earned, that legends are legends for a reason, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is know when to walk away. Chaka Khan taught us all that lesson, and the world is better for it.